build a spaceship 1 kilometer long. That's the plan announced by the National Natural Science Foundation of China a few years ago. For comparison, such a vessel would be almost 10 times the size of humanity's largest structure in orbit, the International Space Station. And that's not all. This giant will be 3 times the size of the USS Nostromo from Alien and 1.5 times the size of the 5th-generation flagship USS Enterprise D from Star Trek. NASA experts immediately labeled the Chinese project as something out of the realm of science fiction. But why is that necessarily a bad thing? Perhaps it's worth considering sci-fi author imaginings now to prepare for our truly colossal space future. In this video, you'll learn: can ships be larger than a planet? How long will the fastest ones take to reach other stars? Which of them impresses with its design alone? These are the most absurd yet coolest sci-fi spaceships. For the first time, genuinely massive spaceships captured the public's imagination back in the late 60s with Stanley Kubrick's Space Odyssey. The interplanetary Discovery 1 sent to Jupiter is 140 meters long, which is a quarter larger than the ISS. A decade later, the stakes were raised by the Battlestar Galactica TV series, where the eponymous military cruiser was a real giant created by the efforts of the 12 colonies. It was almost 1.5 kilometers long and housed a crew of nearly 2,000. But let's be honest, in those years, the most iconic giant ships were the Star Destroyers from the mega-popular Star Wars. 1 kilometer, 600 meters, or a full mile long, it was not just a mobile military base for a fleet of fighters and landing troops, but also a powerful statement of the Galactic Empire's might. But in sci-fi, there's always a dictatorship with even greater ambitions and spaceships. Just one vessel of the Great Borg Empire nearly defeated the United Federation of Planets in the Star Trek universe. Each side of this colossal cube measures over 3 kilometers in length, and in this volume of 27 cubic kilometers, you could fit 10,000 Great Pyramids of Giza. However, all these incredible shapes and sizes naturally inspired parodies like Spaceballs, where the villainous flagship stretched across the screen for a full 1.5 minutes. Yet, the laughable Spaceball 1 is only 11 kilometers long, and that's not very much by the standards of truly realistic interstellar conflicts. The multiplayer game EVE Online is considered one of the best sci-fi simulations of future space wars, and the backbone of its large strike fleets is the Titans. I think it won't be a surprise that the first of these giants, Imud Hubrau, was also created by the empire known as Amar during the era of active expansion. However, with dimensions of over 100 kilometers, these spaceships could accidentally knock a small moon off its orbit with their gravitational field. Thus, the Amar engineers eventually developed much smaller and more practical avatars, though they are still gigantic. At nearly 14 kilometers long, this Titan is more than 4 times longer than the Borg cubes from Star Trek. However, the Avatar is not the largest in EVE Online. Other factions, Galente, Caldari, and the Minmatar, responded by constructing the most massive Titans, Erebus, Leviathan, and Ragnarok, the largest of which exceed 18 kilometers in length. In the epic battles of New Eden, sometimes over 1,000 players pilot these giants. They provide powerful fire support to their fleets and bolster their allies. The loss count of Titans often reaches into the hundreds. Such scales would also fit well with the Highliners from Dune. These colossal cargo ships are capable of moving entire fleets across the universe. According to Frank Herbert's descriptions, the largest of these cylindrical spaceships were over 20 kilometers long. And it seems to be the limit where spacecraft sizes lose any practical meaning. The arriving spacecraft V'ger from Star Trek, the infamous Death Stars from Star Wars, and the colossal mobile fortress Phalanx from the Warhammer universe are all comparable in size to small planets. However, their immense scale is just to impress their opponents with a gargantuan level of threat. Yet size is far from the only measure of a spacecraft's power. In the vast expanses of the universe, one of the most crucial factors is speed. And our real spacecraft don't show very impressive results here. In 2023, NASA's Parker Solar Probe set a record speed, exceeding 192 kilometers per second. At that speed, it could reach the moon in just over half an hour. However, even to reach the nearest stars in the Alpha Centauri system, which are at a distance of 4 1/3 light years, Parker would take more than 6,700 years to reach them. And that's because its so-called record speed is actually less than 1,000th of the speed of light, which is what really matters in space. If we want to attempt to explore even the solar system, we would need at least the Epstein magnetic ion drive from the sci-fi novels and TV series The Expanse. With it, the fastest ships, like the Razorback yacht, could accelerate to 11,000 kilometers per second. That's already over 3.5% of the speed of light. So, for instance, you could reach Jupiter from Earth in 13.5 hours, instead of 1.5 years like NASA's Voyager probes. But even if the tiny Razorback had enough fuel, the journey to the Alpha Centauri system would take 115 years. However, there's already a technology today that helps sci-fi ships become significantly faster while remaining scientifically plausible: solar sails. I bet you didn't notice they were on the ship that carried humans to Pandora in James Cameron's Avatar. Using solar sails, powerful lasers in the solar system accelerated the ISV Venture Star to nearly 210,000 kilometers per second. That's already 70% of the speed of light, meaning the voyage to Alpha Centauri would take this spaceship 6 years and 9 months. Yet, as we know from the theory of relativity, as a ship approaches the speed of light, the energy expenditure becomes practically infinite, so there's no choice but to bypass this natural barrier. In James Cameron's Aliens, the massive colonial marine ship is actually quite fast. The USS Sulaco is 271 times faster than light, all thanks to the hyperdrive, which temporarily turns the entire ship into tachyon matter, particles that literally cannot move slower than light. So, the Sulaco could reach Alpha Centauri in less than 6 days. But space is so vast that even at such speeds, the crew has to sleep in cryocapsules for years when traveling to more distant stars. A true interstellar civilization needs something much faster: a warp drive. It creates a bubble of space which, unlike matter, isn't limited by the speed of light and moves it. So, the Enterprise D from Star Trek could accelerate to 1,649 times the speed of light. And that clumsy Borg cube could reach almost 8,000 times the speed of light. But I can't shake the feeling that there's something off about combining such massive size with incredible speed. Warp drives are far more realistic in EVE Online. The larger the ship, the slower it is in warp, which is why, for example, Titans can only exceed the speed of light by a few hundred times. But This little speedster, the Leopard, when fully optimized for speed, can cover 32 astronomical units per second. That's a bit more than the distance from the Sun to Neptune. And if we calculate further, the Leopard can reach 15,000 times the speed of light. Thus, travel between neighboring stars takes hours, not days. In fiction, there are also many ships that are millions and millions of times faster than light, like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. But this is more driven by the need to quickly switch locations in movies rather than any scientific considerations. Eventually, the fastest of all is the Heart of Gold ship from Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Thanks to quantum effects, it moves through space almost instantly. However, once a spacecraft reaches its destination, other characteristics come into play. The key aspect is the power of the ship. I know what you're thinking. How can anything compete with the Death Star? According to meticulous calculations by Star Wars fans, the super laser of this ship has a power of 620 million yotawatts, which is almost 2 million times greater than the Sun's energy output. That's why the Death Star easily destroyed 2 planets, including Princess Leia's homeworld, Alderaan. But that's it. To me, a giant ship that only managed to fire full power a couple of times before being blown up due to a terrible design flaw is more a sign of weakness than power. A completely different story is this hellish, uncrewed ship from the original Star Trek. It was designed by an unknown alien race to devastate entire star systems. The nameless Planet Killer is only 2 kilometers 700 meters long, meaning it's 60 times smaller than the Death Star. However, the Planet Killer's anti-proton laser is at least 1,500 times more powerful than the Galactic Empire's superweapon. Thus, the alien managed to destroy at least 8 planets, turning them into fuel for its reactor. Moreover, the Planet Killer's hull turned out to be completely invulnerable to any weaponry, so the Federation had to sacrifice the USS Constellation to disable it. However, the Galactic Empire still had one more ace up its sleeve. After Emperor Palpatine's death, Han Solo and Chewbacca aboard the Millennium Falcon stumbled upon this unremarkable ship in an isolated star system. It's the same size as typical Rebel fighters, but here, the internals make all the difference. The hull of this ship, made of quantum crystals, is invulnerable even to powerful turbo lasers. Its arsenal includes 11 resonance torpedoes, each capable of destroying not just a planet, but an entire star. Just one shot from this ship causes a supernova, leading to the destruction of the entire star system, which is why it's called the Sun Crusher. Luckily for the New Republic, Han Solo managed to destroy this ship, though only by sending it straight into a black hole. But let's be honest, all this super powerful super weaponry is actually super imaginary and doesn't fulfill its primary function, intimidating the enemy. Even knowing about the infamous Death Star, the rebels didn't stop resisting, as the Empire expected. Instead, they fought even harder, understanding their end was inevitable. That's why, in the Space Wars of EVE Online, you won't find a single ship with insanely powerful superweapons. Sci-fi rarely addresses this, but excess heat from each shot is incredibly difficult to dissipate in the vacuum of space. This places a limit on weapon capabilities. The discharges from the Doomsday weapons on the largest ships, the Titans, are spectacular. At the same time, their destructive power is comparable to a relatively small atomic bomb explosion. But a ship's power isn't necessarily measured in kilotons of TNT. What really matters is the overall capability of its arsenal. The Nyx supercarrier, created by the Gallente Federation, holds a distinguished place even when comparing the sizes of ships. It's noticeably longer than the Borg cube, over 3,300 meters from bow to stern. But the most important thing is that Nyx supercarriers are so deadly that they've destroyed more ships in New Eden than all other supercarriers combined. This is because each of them can carry up to 60 fighter drones. They automatically attack any targets within range, while the supercarrier stays at a safe distance. So this ship can win without a scratch. Nyx is a nightmare for an entire fleet, even without super-powerful lasers or apocalyptic torpedoes. The mere arrival of a squadron of these supercarriers on the battlefield is already an extremely impressive display of power. This ability of sci-fi spaceships to impress just by their appearance definitely deserves a separate category for comparison. Admit it, when you first saw the design of the Starship from SpaceX, you immediately believed it could indeed take us to Mars, just like the old-school rockets from classic Ray Bradbury books. But unfortunately, the reality of the modern world is that leading governments are thinking more about orbital weaponry than interplanetary flights. In fact, I doubt that the kilometer-long Chinese spaceship will be purely a scientific laboratory. And perhaps the most impressive representation of the future arms race is the USS Nomad from the sci-fi movie Creator. Orbiting at low altitudes, it can deliver devastating strikes with ballistic missiles to targets anywhere on Earth. And precisely because of the size of these projectiles relative to the USS Nomad, attentive viewers have calculated that the length, or rather the width, of this ship could reach 10 kilometers. It almost matches the Titans from EVE Online, built by much more advanced civilizations. But as soon as you spot this giant metal albatross through the clouds, it's already too late to escape. Within a minute, after laser scanning and target confirmation, total annihilation follows. Just the sight of the Nomad instills cold terror. Now, imagine seeing not a futuristic craft with a practical design in orbit, but the space battleship Yamato. This isn't a replica of the legendary ship of the Imperial Japanese Navy. It's the actual ship, just modernized for space. Usually, the Japanese don't seek excuses for their absurd designs, but here there is one. Aliens drove humanity underground, and after receiving the blueprints for a warp drive, Earth's engineers could only use the hulls of old Yamato-class naval vessels to create a new battle fleet. In any case, a space battle between upgraded World War II ships and a futuristic alien armada is pretty cool. But if you want both futurism and well-thought-out realism without any over-the-top cliches, there's no better place than New Eden. Players in EVE Online have access to over 400 ships, and the number of vessels with stunning designs is in the dozens. To me, the small exploration ships Astro and Stratios are a subtle homage to Stanley Kubrick's Space Odyssey. The white ergonomic hulls and the large ring at the rear make them resemble actual NASA prototypes, not sci-fi products. If you're looking for something more fantastical, how about the Gallente frigate Tristan, which resembles a space spider or a drone from an unknown alien race? By the way, it's equipped with combat drones just like its bigger brother, the Nyx supercarrier. One of the new pirate battle cruisers, Kisrael, gives off similar biomechanical vibes. It's as if the entire ship is one massive cannon from an unknown ancient race. True sci-fi enthusiasts might trace the likely inspiration for the designers of the Leviathan from the Farscape series. Moya is literally a living ship capable of self-repairing after damage. Next to the 1.5-kilometer Leviathan, Kisrael indeed looks like its child. If you still dream of commanding a Yamato-class space battleship, confidently take the helm of the Corax destroyer. Its hull contours closely resemble naval dreadnoughts of the past, and the slight asymmetry of the superstructure adds the necessary touch of grounded realism. But in New Eden, you can pilot more than just combat ships. Among them, it's hard to find a more iconic vessel than the Providence Amar freighter. It's like an obsidian spearhead of the Aztecs, equipped with powerful ion engines and massive. You'd hardly want to tangle with a ship that's 1.5 times larger than the Star Destroyer, even if it's not a warship. Opinions on the design of the most iconic and largest ships in New Eden, Titans, vary among players. Some consider the Avatar the coolest, while others see it as a giant mushroom. The Erebus either projects the might of the Galente fleet or has an overly bloated front section. The Leviathan and Ragnarok look the most streamlined and futuristic, but some might say they're boring. What do you think? Anyway, in EVE Online, you'll definitely find a ship with the exact characteristics and design that suit you. But in sci-fi, there's another unique vessel that could claim top spots in any category. The Lex, from the show of the same name, is not only a 10-kilometer giant, it can travel at 2.5 million times the speed of light and blow up entire planets with its superweapon. But how to assess its insect-like design and the show's decor? Visionary genius? Or very cheap and childish? Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know which of the listed sci-fi ships you think is the coolest.